You might feel like you're completely lost and it's hopeless. It's not. There's always somebody out there that'll take you in, and give you safety. That's first and foremost, above anything else. One of the biggest things that I want to do personally, and been working on it for a few years now, is I'm writing this in a book, my story, but it's not just my stories. My story is only a 48-minute book, and you got to get into at least a couple hours for it to be a good seller on the paperback. And I know a 48-minute book's a good read, but I decided to reach out to some of the other people that got the organs, and I was talking to Ron, and we got Ron, and I told him, I said, it'd be nice if you wrote your story, your backstory. That's your 48 minutes of fame. And then reached out and found out who got the heart transplant. And then, just recently, actually about 2 months ago, I found out who got the double lung transplant down in McGrath, Alberta. And that she's doing fine and she's doing well. And again, I wish I could find the gentleman that, got the skin graft that night, because I'd love to get his chapter of, I hope that he's changed his ways of the drinking and driving. Because my goal is that when this book is published, if we can get everybody's stories, if we could get the drunk driver, his would go to Mad Canada. Ron and my proceeds would go to Liver and the Kidney Foundation. For Jim, I'd hope that his would go to the heart and lung. And the girl down in McGrath, I'd same thing as, maybe the Lung Foundation, or for lung cancers or something, where proceeds are being put to a better use. But there's things throughout the whole story that there's moments in time, that now that I'm telling it again, that you remember different times in each story. There's just different moments. Like one of the instances I remember where after my employer fired me, I was living off of just government disability for, 2.5 years. My daughter was a dancer. She was good, man. She was hip hop and ballet and jazz and lyrical, and she was an artist. And her and her friend Caitlin, they were always front and center. And the group wanted to go down to Disneyland, and they had an opportunity to go dance there. But our family being on, the disability and no income, there was just no way. So my kids and I would drive the van, and every weekend, Thursday, they'd go out and they'd put flyers on 200 doors, and they'd raise money. And we didn't have any money. Literally, the money we had is we got permission from the dance studio, and every week for about 6 months, those kids, whether it was 30 below, raining, those kids went out and put out 200 flyers on 200 homes. And we'd go back a couple days later, and we'd go with the van and take 5 or 6 trips and fill up the van with bottles and take them to the bottle depot. And then that money went into a fund so that she could go and dance in Disney. And it was just going to be her, because it was not still enough for a family to go. And I just remember that closer to the day, I got a phone call that somebody had donated so that I could go down and watch her dance in Disney, and they paid for Nicholas to go as well. So it's just, special. Still to this day, I don't know who did that, but like I said, we didn't have money at the time to do it, and we were just doing the fundraising for her to do it, and somebody stepped up and helped us out of a situation. That's why another reason of giving back now that I own my own company and doing well, and I'm able to give back. It's because somebody gave to me when I needed it. There's so many events, keep talking and talking, and it never ends. There's just all these little situations, little moments. Like when I was on hemodialysis, I'd pass out all the time because I had blood pressure like a child. My average blood pressure was 65 over 30, and stood up too fast. I'd be on the ground, and kids laughing at me because Dad would fall down the stairs in the middle of the night because I'd pass out, and they'd find me sleeping at the bottom of the stairs because Dad passed out again. Or my dog Bailey. One day I passed out in the middle of the road and he stood by me until a passerby came and woke me up. And I was walking across the street one day, walking him, and I passed out and he just stood by me the whole time. I miss him. I lost him just after I got the transplant. He broke his back on freezing rain. It took me about 10 years almost to get over that, and be able to get another dog. And I ended up getting a dog. I adopted a dog and, went out to Saving Grace, Alberta. They had a thing where they couldn't get really medical supplies, so my company went out and I donated a bunch of medical masks to them. And they had an adoption event. Next thing I know, I came home with this little polar bear and named him Bear, and he goes everywhere with me. He's awesome. He's my therapy dog.
Aww.
Yeah. But yeah, there's dates and events that just little tidbits, like, oh man. I remember the company that I worked for 15 years. After I got my transplant, so I got my transplant September 29th, 2013. And about a week later, they tried suing me because they wanted the disability payments back. And the judge, I remember him saying, it's like, oh, what? He planned for the gentleman to take his own life, and this is a company I worked for 15 years. And, it was all about the dollars and cents for them. And it was a pretty big case because it was something where companies do self-insuring, and to me it's a wrong practice. You pay into something in those times of needs. Just don't put families through more than they need to go through. But I just remember there's situations where ended up having to get a divorce after the transplant. Lives change. I lost a lot of friends when I got sick. It's a very hard thing to go through, and don't judge people because they're sick. Be there for them because they're sick.
Yeah, I think you actually... Sorry, so that was what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
The three things I was most curious about.
Yes.
The first one, you started off by talking about how, you always found humor in life and humor in things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're talking about so many different trials and tribulations that you've gone through, and you're seeing the trials and tribulations of other people.
Yeah.
I was just curious, at any point, did that... that humor or that attitude, do you think that was always a part of you and that stayed with you?
It did. It stayed with me where there was times where, like, for example, I would joke with the nurses and the doctors if they were having a bad day. Mm-hmm. And it still stays with me to this day where I'll go in and, a nurse is having a bad day, so I'll go in and I'll draw a picture of a kidney on a Tim Hortons cup. And I'll go to 3G2 and I'll drop off kidney cups for them to get, for drinks. And
cups, right?
yeah, the black jelly bean cups, exactly. Or, Ethan, we're talking 10 years since I got sick. And to this day, he remembers the black jelly bean and he laughs about it. Like when we sit down with their family, it's something that for him, that's a moment. Or Zuber Bueller, she was laughing about it. She just, the coolest way to explain it. Mm-hmm. Same thing when I'm telling jokes with Amanda or my other one is I have a really good friend, Vicky. She's another one that's just I can brighten her day. She can be having the worst day in the world, and she'll be like, "Oh my God, you're killing it today! You're so funny! Where are you coming up with these?" And oh, just it's just sometimes it's. And you don't even remember them, and it's not something you thought about. It's just in the moment type of humor. Mm-hmm. Or, it'll be taking a black pen and marking out a bumper sticker. So it's honey, kiss me. And, it's just one, and then the wife comes out, and next thing you know, you're watching them in the parking lot at the Sobeys, and the wife comes up and kisses the husband. The husband's like, "Where'd that come from?" It's like, "Well, you wrote on the bumper for kiss me," and I didn't write that. She's like, "Well, you got me to kiss you, or somebody did." But just seeing that smile on his face and her face, and life is too short. Everything has to be, you know, how do we make it better? One day I remember I was at Tim Hortons, and there's these two police officers in behind me, and so I bought them a coffee. Well, right away they pulled me over half a block away. Why'd you buy us coffees? I don't know, you guys looked like you were arguing. He goes, well, we were. And I said, well, yeah, but the second that she said it's paid for, you guys stopped arguing. I saw you, I was in your window. So you stopped arguing. What were you guys arguing about? He looks at his partner and he goes, what were we arguing about? Well, I don't know. What were we arguing about? Because of that act, they stopped arguing.
Yeah.
And they just came to thank me. So that's kind of things that I do, and, you know, that's not humor, but to me, like, I thought the situation was funny. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get these guys.
Well, honestly, I'm hearing this, and I feel like it's connecting to everything else you're saying, where you're seeing everything and the people around you. And I don't know, in my head, when most people look at other people, right, they try to empathize, they try to understand, but there's also this like introspective scenario that goes on with them where you know, you get so lost in yourself, and in the type of situation that you're talking about that arises over and over again. I find it absolutely astounding that you were able to take a moment and just recognize the surrounding around you. And I guess the other part of my question was to do with, so the humor was always there, and you were always there trying to make people happy, which is where the humor is coming from. But did you find like that level of empathy and understanding the people around you helped you not go into darkness through all of this? Because I think you like hinted at that a couple of times, but
it did. Like, I had to find, like, when I was very angry, I was angry to the point where there was points where I was on dialysis where, you know, you're being told that, one, my backstory of dialysis wasn't just dialysis. Like, right away, even though I got onto dialysis, my odds of finding a transplant were like Ron, you know, 10 plus years. Normally when a person's kidneys fail, they have, you know, time. They know about it coming.
Yeah.
So if you know that your kidneys are failing and they can get you onto dialysis when your kidneys hit 15%, and dialysis is giving you 15%, you can live for years on 30% function. I walked into the hospital with 0. So now all of a sudden I'm on function of, you know, 10 to 15% of dialysis, which isn't enough to support life. So every day I was dying, and I was getting really sick. You know, I was vomiting all the time. I was 109 pounds. I looked sick, you know, fainting all the time. There was a chance that, hey, geez, one of these walks of the dog, I'm going to faint in the middle of the road and get hit by a car. So I started thinking, like, well, maybe I should just stop doing dialysis. You know, and those thoughts were in my mind. And then it became to the point, I was like, no, like, how do we change this? So I remember talking with Dr. Duggan, and we came up with a plan, because my only option at the time was Edmonton and Northern Alberta. That was the pool for kidney. Right? So that was the pool that I was allowed to pull from. I couldn't pull from the Calgary area. I couldn't pull from Vancouver, Toronto. So Dr. Duggan ended up going to basically Parliament and Health Canada and allowing highly sensitized, you know, other than heart or lung, which are always on the national list, because obviously you need someone to die in order to get an organ. Whereas with kidney and liver, you know, living organ's an option. Well, the school being a Catholic school, there was a lot of people that went and got tested, and there was no matches. Lots of friends, because of how sensitized I was. So I remember Duggan, she went and had it where I was allowed to be added, as well as any future, you know, highly sensitized patients could be added to the national list. And on top of that, I was added to a pilot program in Minneapolis where, you know, their pool of, you know, 2 million people was able to be used, as well as, you know, there was, I think, Montana and a couple other states. So there's kind of a joint transplant pool. So if there was a transplant, I'd have to be flown down to the States, have the transplant, and Alberta Health Services would pay for the procedures and whatnot, and all the medicines till I got back. And when I found out that that was added, and I was added to the other list, it really changed from being angry to, how am I going to survive this? Like, because it was talking years. It was, you know, it wasn't something that was going to happen tomorrow. Like, I was going to be on dialysis, I told, for years. And I had to figure out a way, and because I was so depressed and angry at life, you know, like, why'd this happen? Like, I had a great career, you know, I was making really good money, was able to take my kids on a vacation every year, had a nice house, had 2 cars. Everything was perfect, right? And then 35 comes along and it's like, wham, my life is over. No, I had to figure a way of, my life isn't over, my life has just begun. How do I survive this? How are you going to survive this, Trevor? Well, what made you funny? Well, then I started thinking of times when, I younger and golf tournaments and, come home drunk, but I was too drunk to figure out how to open the front door, so I slept between the front door and the screen door. That was a good one. And kid opened up the door in the morning and fall face first on the ground. And or the time that I fell asleep in somebody's, I don't know, what was it, flower garden? But I at least brought the wife home flowers. They weren't my flowers, but they brought home flowers. So I was always able to make those jokes, and I started realizing that sense of humor. A really good friend of mine, he's up in heaven, but Marlon, he's a good buddy of mine, and we went on golf tournaments, and we would drink pretty heavily, and so we went to this one tournament. We were down in one of the courses in Edmonton, and afterwards we throw the clubs into the back of his truck and sat around there for a while. And this is before obviously the whole drinking and driving and realizing that had a few drinks on the course and then a bunch of water, and then we drove his truck to a bar down the road, and we left it there, but then we had made the thing and said, okay, you're not driving, we're gonna take a cab home from here, right? Like we're definitely taking a cab now. And believe me, if I had my chance now, we would have taken a cab from the course, but being young and dumb, we're all done, but been there, and we need to all stop, please. But we go to the bar, we get really drunk, and we come out. When we went in, we have 2 sets of golf clubs that, if anybody who golfs, they're not cheap. They're bloody expensive. We were more pissed that somebody had stolen our cooler that still had beer in it. The golf clubs were still in the back of the truck. But that night, I remember Marlon and I, we were pissed that somebody stole our beer. They're like, they stole the bloody beer. Our golf clubs are here. What the hell's wrong with people? You leave the beer. And I remember that. So we were so drunk, and we couldn't get a cab because there wasn't a cab that would take us. So we were, I don't know, where were we? I don't know. We were close enough to walk to White Ave, but it was cold because it was springtime, but it was cold at night. But we walked to White Ave, and White Ave was still open. So we're like, sweet, let's go to some bars. So we went down to the Black Dog, and we couldn't get in the Black Dog because we were too drunk. So then we fell asleep on the bouncer's car because we decided that was a good thing to do because he wouldn't let us in. So we fell asleep on his car, but he didn't like that too much. Oh, no. So then anybody from the age of the Purple Onion, it was basically a multi-gender bar. And we just liked to dance, Marlon and I. We didn't care, I don't mind dancing with a guy, I don't mind dancing with a girl. Like, it's just out there having fun. And so, no shame. And like I said, we're just there to have fun and to dance. And so we go into the Purple Onion, and I just remember standing up there and we're singing karaoke at 4 a.m. in a gay bar. And he was about to get married the following week, so, And the reason why I tell people is please don't drink and drive is I lost Marlon. Him and I, we played beach volleyball together for many years. I went to set up the nets, and he had a couple beers at work, and a couple beers turned into a couple more, and he got into an accident. He left and realized that he'd taken the wrong exit, and he got onto the white mud, and he ran into the back of a truck on his motorbike. And the nurse that was at the hospital, his wife, the one that saw him first when they took his helmet off, was his wife of only a few weeks. So please stop drinking and driving, people. You really never know who you're going to hurt. You're hurting everybody. And I'm just as guilty, and that's why I never do it anymore, is because I lost my good friend to drinking and driving. My son was only 11 months old when the wedding happened. And I just remember Marlon was the most important guy in my life. I went everywhere with him. He was my buddy. And I lost him to something stupid. It was senseless and stupid. And his wife she was widowed weeks after being married because of it. So, but yeah, the humor him and I would do, like, oh my God, even at his funeral, I remember that, like, just telling jokes, making people laugh. I mean, telling that Purple Onion and people, like I said, of, you know, anybody that's over, I'm gonna say 40 years old, knows that the Purple Onion was Edmonton's gay bar. And like I said, most people that were, I'm gonna say, not of that orientation would never step foot in that bar, because they had that belief or feeling. And to me, Marlon and I, we were always out there going, whatever, it's just, we're out there to have fun. Like, every day was just to live our day to the fullest and have as much fun as possible. And as soon as you walk in there, I'm sorry, they know that you're not part of that culture, but they respect you that you're there and you're singing with them and you're singing YMCA, and it's just, it was a blast. Right? And so I remember the funeral, you know, people were crying, his poor wife was crying, and I was crying, and, you know, then started telling the jokes and making people smile and making him remember him for who he was. And, you know, the music that him and I would play, or the golf club story that made people laugh, because, like, $50 worth of beer versus $2,000 worth of club, and you stole our bloody beer, like, stuff like that. So it really, that's what changed from my depression. I had to get back to that, whatever it takes to be funny or tell jokes. And like I said, you know, I have a friend, Vicky, that's been, you know, she has bad days, and, you know, when her and her daughter are fighting, and I'll tell them jokes, or when you're having a bad day, I'll tell you a joke or something on the way out here, and we both laugh. And my friend Amanda and I think we laugh alike, which is odd, because I hate my laugh, and it's not, I love your laugh, so it's kind of an oxymoron. Like, it's like, I hate my own laugh, but I like Amanda's laugh. How does that work out? Like, that just doesn't work out in life, people. If you hate one, but you like somebody else, and it's not the same. Anyways, but yeah, no, that's just who I am. I always try to make jokes on everything I do. But I'm definitely not a stand-up comic. You could throw, if this was live, you could be throwing drinks, booing me off stage, and I'd probably be booing myself off stage, because I never shut up. Like, it's my worst attribute.
You say worst, I say best, but that's just a different in perspective, eh?
I like this guy.
It's with you.
He's my new best friend.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Sorry, okay, I have so many more, but I'm just going to ask you two more, if that's okay, and then we will... no, you guys have had a long day as well, so thank you.
I'm recharged right now. This is amazing.
Well, when I get talking like this, I literally go hours, because, like, some of our suppliers are down, like, Eastern Canada, so sometimes I get up at 3 a.m, and working with deals, you know, for Doctors Without Borders, so I'm up sometimes till, like, 2 a.m, and believe it or not, after a person has a transplant, you have two types of people: the people that give up on life,
Mm-hmm.
and the people that really embrace it and want to live every moment. I hardly sleep. You know, I sleep maybe six hours, if that, on a weekend, and maybe 4 hours on a weekday. Like, I just flew back from Vancouver today, and I was up at basically 4 a.m, and I didn't go to bed until 1 Vancouver time, which is 2 o'clock here. So, you know, you're only getting a few hours of sleep, and
Mm-hmm.
to me, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know, I got to live this life. I got to do everything I possibly can. You know, driving down here to Calgary today is, you know, talking about things that I still want to do, and found this awesome place here in Calgary, indoor skydiving. Like, it's like sweet, awesome.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
yeah, right. You know, so what can you do? Like, push your limits, push your boundaries. You know, I hated singing karaoke as a kid. Now I love it. You know, I love making a fool of myself in front of people. As you know, laughter is the best medicine. You know, there's two things in life that can make a person feel better: laughter and a hug. You know, when you hug somebody or an animal or whatnot, hug it and actually think, during that moment of that hug, there's nothing else in the world that matters. That hug is the only thing that you're thinking about for those 20 seconds. And that 20 seconds, your body has nothing else in the world that's putting on. It's like you've just been born. When you're just born, you have nothing in the world that's weighing on you. You don't have financials. You don't have the mortgage payment. You don't have the car payment. You don't have your girlfriend screaming at you. You don't have your boyfriend yelling at you, whatnot. That 20 seconds of the hug, if your boyfriend, your wife, your girlfriend, your lover is yelling at you, barring safety reasons, grab them and give them a hug.
True.
That argument will end on that hug.
Bold move.
Bold move, eh? That's why I said safety reasons. At the end of the podcast, there'll be a little documentary that I'm not responsible. See, another joke. See, I love telling jokes like that. So.
One of the things I was curious about, and I think you've touched on this like quite a few times, is so yeah, you know, this kind of stuff can be very hard on relationships, like you mentioned. Like people
Yes.
tend to lose touch and all that stuff. So I guess my question to you is more about your perspective in regards to how do you view, like, how has your view on relationships changed since
Ooh, I
this
love
all
that.
happened?
Relationships when people get sick are very tough, you know, and for anybody who's been out there, first and foremost, if you're in a dangerous situation, please reach out to whoever, reach out to a friend, reach out to your neighbor, anybody, please. That's utmost importance. You might feel like you're completely lost and it's hopeless. It's not. There's always somebody out there that'll take you in and give you safety. That's first and foremost, above anything else. In your vows, when you get married, the death to us part, till you part or whatnot, which is funny because my wife's sister married us and she forgot to say the vows for my side. So technically, to this day, I still deny that I actually got married because I actually never said I do. Because everyone started clapping and I'm like looking around going like, I actually never said anything, but I signed the damn marriage certificate, so I was screwed from day one. So that's for all the guys that were divorced, or women that got divorced. That's the little joke that I have for you. Is make sure that you don't say I do unless you really want
to a whole other level, right?
Right. So yeah. So that was the big running joke, and the whole marriage after party, the ball and the banquet. It was so funny because everyone's like, "Did you say I do? I didn't hear it." I'm like, "No, I don't think so." Fuck, dude, you're not married. That's awesome. High fives going around. Shots. He got married without getting married. That's fucking awesome. High fives. That was the biggest joke at the dance. Oh my god, like everyone's like, dude, and I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I'm so sorry, Trevor. Like, I got nervous. I'm like, don't worry about it. Nobody caught on. Everybody caught on. Yeah, everyone caught on. It was a small wedding. Everybody knows you screwed up. Your fault. So, you know, every marriage has good years, bad years, and sometimes you just drift apart. And I blame myself for the original drifting apart where I didn't see the signs, you know, and not everyone's going to recognize it. And don't blame yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. People kind of just, as we grow, we all learn, we all change. It happens. But find common ground that you can move on. But when you're talking a sickness, you have to look at a person where the person that you fell in love with and you married or you're dating gets sick. Maybe it's terminal cancer, maybe it's a kidney failure, maybe it's heart failure or whatnot. Or maybe they've got, you know, some other disease that's really affecting how they live their lives. Even diabetes, it's affecting a lot of people's lives because of the monitoring and how they have to eat out. And maybe I like to go to McDonald's. But not many other people go or don't like eating there. That's fine. That's their choice. Those are things that are hard on relationships because I want to go this place, but you can't. So now I'm sacrificing something that I want to do because I can't because of you. And I lost a lot of friends because of that during the transplant, where I used to go over to this one couple's house and we'd have food all the time, weekend parties. But they'd be having Chinese food and everything else. And when you're told that you can't have sodium and whatnot, it's kind of, everyone feels bad. Oh, there's Trevor. He's in the corner. He's not really eating. Like, oh shit, we should have got a vegetable tray. Fuck, Kevin, why the hell didn't you buy a vegetable tray? And now they're fighting. And then you feel bad because they're fighting because you can't eat the, you know, miso, MSG soaked, you know, ginger curry that they brought, or ginger beef, and so those were really hard. And then next thing you know, it was you're getting invited less and less. But the problem is when you get invited less and less, your significant other gets invited less and less, so they slowly get cut off. So that's where it really gets hard. And for the friends that are out there of these situations, don't cut them off. Bring them in, even if it's just the significant other. Take them to a movie on your date night, right? Let them join you. Let them get out of the house. They need that break. They need the breather. And I believe that because my significant other at the time didn't get that break, it weighed to the point where she found that break down the road with somebody else. And ultimately, like I said, that's fine. It happens, but again, be civil about it and just you move on. It was really hard, and it's hard on anybody. And the only thing I can tell people is you got to sit down and talk. I tried talking, but you could just tell that the barrier had already gone up. I recognized the signs too late, and the signs, there's no one tell. The tell is that you start getting isolated. And that isolation is not just on you. Even though I was being isolated and I started not hanging out with friends and I wasn't going to work on a normal date basis, but on those things when I would go out, well, we had a babysitter just because I went out with the guys golfing on a weekend, and with Marlon, she was going out with her girlfriends, right? Maybe going to the mall, maybe going shopping, maybe going getting nails done or hair done or whatever it is, going to Vegas for the weekend. Well, when you're taking care of someone, that goes all the wayside. So if you get really sick like that, I would think is you got to find those times, is set a couple days a week, and just no matter what the situation is, no matter how hard it is to leave that person, because you want to be there for them, you got to find time for yourself. I'm not going anywhere. I'm hooked up to a machine. You got to go out. Got to take the kids out. Let the kids go to the park and play. If you have kids, if you have a dog, go walk your dog. Take your dog to the dog park. Meet new people, talk to people, because the isolation is the biggest killer. If you're not going out, and I say dog park because I have a dog. You go to the dog park. I'm always talking to somebody at the dog park, but that's because, again, like I told you, sorry guys, like I talk to everybody. I talk too much. But it's a release for people as you're meeting other people, even if you never see that person again. And half the time at the dog park, I might not see them again for 3 or 4 weeks. Not like they're a regular acquaintance, but for that 25 minutes or an hour that I'm walking with that person around the loop in Twilliger, it's a loop where I have interaction with somebody that hour of my life, I've changed their life, they've changed my life, because I met somebody that they listened to me. And having people listen to you is the greatest, I don't want to say accomplishment, but gift that we are able to get from somebody else, is spending that time where they're not asking for anything in return. It's just for that moment in time they're listening to you and they're telling you their stories. And in those walks that I've done, or these Rotary clubs or lectures I've talked to, or customers that I go and that I have to visit with my company, the number of people I found out is, oh my God, my niece just got a lung transplant, but she's having a really hard time. Can I get her to call you? She probably could relate to you. I meet so many people where that voice is out there, or meeting, a doctor in a Canadian Tire, and he ends up deciding to buy a product from our company that's going to go down to Belize in a package that we're working on. You never know who you're going to talk to, and it never knows what you're going to change. And those little moments, it makes you forget everything else that's going around. So the more that we can socialize with people as a distraction. So for example, if you're in treatment 5 days a week, your significant other or yourself needs to find 2 solid days a week where you don't have to be with your significant other, but you have to be social. You have to be out there doing something. Like when I'm on a plane, hell, half the time I'm on the plane, I get people's numbers, and they become, they listen to my company, they email us regularly, and they call me up and they want to keep talking because they become friends in that short little time. They're so interested, and things that I learn from them are just as valuable as what they learn from me. So you have to keep an open mind, but you have to do it for yourself. You have to find that time. If you don't find that time, your relationships will end. I can guarantee you that. Because if you think that you can spend every waking minute for 10 years with only that one person, you guys are both going to end up dead, because people aren't meant to be with one person 24/7 in those circumstances. It'll never work. I mean, you need a break. Mentally, you need a break. Mentally, you need to be decompressed. Well, if 22 hours a day a person is doing dialysis, and that's what you see every time you wake up, when you come home for lunch, when you come home at dinner time, when you go to bed, that's what you're seeing. You never get a break, right? In the back of your mind, I would imagine that what she was thinking is, oh, he's going to be dead tomorrow morning. I'm going to wake up and he's going to be dead next to me, because that's how sick I was. What would that do on a person over those number of years? So her not taking those me days and me not taking those, and really I wasn't given the option of giving the me days, but and not everybody can, but so for certain circumstances, obviously they're tougher on the patient or the person that's going through the sickness. But really, I had to rely on the people around me, and if they start disconnecting, then I'm done. So you got to keep them charged, I'm going to say. Like, they got to be, energized and have that will to keep you going. Because once you're healthy, once you get better and you're out there again, now it's your job to go and return the favor, I'm going to say. And I tried that. I remember after getting the transplant, I would send little notes to her work, and hey, she'd open it up, and it's 2 tickets for a movie on such and such a date at such and such a time, right? And then I had obviously a copy of the other ticket, and that was our date nights. So I brought those back, but it was too late. Like, it was beyond repair, because she never had that recharge time, so she had already checked out by that time. And again, it was me not recognizing it, and not everyone will recognize it. And I say, people that are going into these severe sicknesses or illnesses, it may happen, and nobody's to blame. You're not to blame. Don't blame yourself. And I did. I blamed myself for a long time. I remember when it first, hey, I'm leaving you, and, thinking that I don't want that to happen. I cared about her, and please don't leave. And you realize that it is going to happen. I blame myself, and really it's nobody's to blame. It's just life, Life throws curveballs, and just, again, everything happens for a reason. I actually, I love her because she gave me 2 kids. I loved her when we were together, the dating, the marriage, the trips. I don't love the last few years of being together, because it had already deteriorated to the point where it was unfixable, but it's made me an even better person, because now I know my mistakes. So the next person that I actually fall in love with, I know little tricks that, maybe not tricks, that's the wrong word. Things to do that keep both parties feeling like it's your high school crush.
Relationship hacks.
Yeah, relationship hacks. Thank you. Look at this. Amanda, she's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, sorry.
Yep, no, go on.
Very last question, because frankly, that was beautiful, and you actually covered the entire point of this podcast in the first place.
I love it.
Right, which is exactly that. It's like, genuine conversations, and like just trying to meet people and understand who they are without judgment. But my last question to you, and this might be a bit of Actually, I really don't even like this question. I just feel the need to ask this.
There's no such thing as a bad question or a bad answer.
I think you've already given the answer. That's the only reason. But I just am re-asking, really. And that's to do with... So at the very beginning, you talked about how you questioned why you're in the situation based on what God and whatnot, right?
So I really didn't say why it happened.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go for it.
The reason why I really, when people hear about how, they don't even believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2011, back to when I came back from Florida and I had traveler's diarrhea and took the antibiotics, and then for a few weeks, everything was better. I wasn't going to the washroom, I wasn't running to the bathroom every 20 minutes, and everything was good. But then all of a sudden it started again. So I started seeing this specialist, and the internal medicine doctor was basically doing these tests, colonoscopy and an endoscope, and then telling me nothing was wrong. Nope, you don't have Crohn's or colitis because it was in my family, and so that was a possibility. Nope, don't have it. Then fast forwarded a few months, the weight loss started happening. At first it was just gradual. Hey man, I'm down to 170. This is awesome. Like I haven't been 170 since like high school. This is great. And I'm still eating cheeseburgers and chocolate bars. Like holy man, this is awesome. Love it. And he was just telling me that it was overactive bowel syndrome and my metabolism was at a high rate, which I don't know how you could determine that from a colonoscopy. Man, that's one hell of a scope. I just sure hope he washed the damn thing before he did the endoscope. Sorry, another joke. Bad one.
Don't apologize.
Yeah, any of those proctologists out there, I'm sorry, guys. That's one of your jokes. I learned it from you, Dr. Steed. So, she said that the first thing when I woke up, she goes, which way did we go first? Did we go throat first or bottom first with that same instrument? I'm like, what the... She starts laughing. If you've ever met the lady, she's about 4'11". She uses a step stool, and when you first meet her, you're like, you're gonna shove that up my... What? You're just... Yeah, anyways. Awesome lady. Thank you. Love you. But yeah, so I started seeing this doctor, and every few weeks he kept doing the same procedures. And through the investigation, once I got sick a few months later, it turned out what the doctor was doing is he kept doing the same two procedures because in the medical world of billing, they're really high-paying procedures, an endoscope and a colonoscopy, because you're put to sleep usually to have them done. So it means you have to have an anesthesiologist on hand. So the doctor's office gets paid a very large sum of money to keep performing these procedures. And in a billing cycle, you can only perform one procedure per term. So that's why multiple procedures. Well, fast forward, because I was being malnourished, what happened is they basically had gotten a coating on the inside of the intestinal wall, which was preventing any nutrients from being absorbed into the body, which is why I got down to 109 pounds. I was being starved to death. I couldn't get anything that I ate would go right through me, and the only nutrients I'd get would be through the stomach or the mouth. Any absorption through that way. Once it hit the intestines, it was straight through. There was almost no nutritional absorption happening. Well, during that time frame, through their investigation, they were trying to figure out what caused the illness. What they had to do is they were, genetic testing. So they genetic tested my kids to see if there was any disposition for lupus or, maybe some other genetic diseases that can cause rapid kidney failure. And they all came back negative, and this was in the first few weeks. And then they determined that I worked in an ISO shop where you report everything, and so in the medical log, the only thing there was a paper cut. I had logged a paper cut. And what their best guess that happened is at 8 months earlier, I was a completely healthy individual. I had had a blood work at about 8 months for, I believe it was insurance purposes, and my kidney function was 100%. They were perfect. They were a healthy individual, flying colors. So sometime between 8 months and, pre-renal failure, on March 28, 2011, kidneys died in an 8-month span. But not only did they die, the left kidney was reabsorbed by the body. The right kidney was down to 3% function. So basically they had died. And so through their determining, and with the logbooks, at roughly around 6 months, so I was already being malnourished at that time, that they figured that the paper cut was an entrance point for some sort of a bacteria that got into the bloodstream that caused an infection that basically the proteins, when they got into the kidney, the body attacked the kidney to save the rest of the body. And so a paper cut is what caused the onset of the renal failure. Yet, even though it was completely 100% preventable, if the doctor had, done a simple x-ray and a blood work, which would have noticed that, hey, look, there's some kidney functions happening here, stopped it, I may have never needed a transplant. But again, if I never had the transplant, I'd never be sitting here today talking, or, I'd be living the same life, might be still married to the same woman, whether she's happy or not, I don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all those little things, is everything happens for a reason, is I wouldn't have set the record of how long I've had this AB transplant for, right? If this is a thing, 8 years is a long time to have an AB transplant. Like, it's out of the normal.
Sorry, I think that's what I was curious about. So it sounds to me like, not just like from a religious view, but from a purely spiritual view, you found your mojo, or not, mantra, and
Yes.
saying it's that exactly that. Everything happens for a reason, and everything that you've done, you've focused on that. What is the reason? What is the reason? What is the reason?
That only came out after,
Okay.
really, only a couple of years ago, I really started thinking of, what's my saying that, when I started telling the story, and when I first would tell it, the accident on QE2 happened, and, the vascular surgeon comes in, Trevor, sorry, we got to release them back to the blood bank, I can't go and harvest them, there's just no way, we got to send them back to the blood bank.
Mm-hmm.
I started thinking about it, and every time I would tell the story, I'm like, why was the reason for that? Like, there had to have been a reason. Like, it doesn't just happen. Like, what are the odds of that accident happening at the time that he's supposed to go and harvest the organs? What are the odds? Like there can't be odds for that. Like, what are the odds that I'm supposed to, be so sensitized and not, like, I have a 1 in 10 million or 20 million chance of getting a transplant, I think was what the odds are. And there's only 30 million people in Canada, and I got my first one, but I didn't take it. Then I get, 2 months later, I get a second one. Well, now I'm way above those odds, right? Like, that's weird. And that one, there's an accident, I can't, that happened. Well, that was an accident. Okay, well, the accidents happened. Yeah, that's understandable. It was the only vascular surgeon on call. Okay, that's 2. But then you get the third phone call, and it's a local guy, and he takes his own life in that sad moment. But in that sad moment, he's the biggest hero in the entire world for 5 people. He saved 5 people, but he didn't just save 5 people. He saved Ron's family, he saved the drunk driver's family, he saved Jim's family, and he saved this girl's family down in southern Alberta. And those families could be huge. We're not just talking parents, we're talking they could have siblings, they could have kids, they could have brothers and sisters, grandparents. That one gentleman's selfless act, what he did in that one moment, that even though he was ready to do that moment, he made some sort of a decision to call 911 and leave his message to tell him to come get his organs. But in that moment, he didn't change 5 people's lives. He changed hundreds and thousands of future lives. And to me, that doesn't happen without a reason. There's no other way of explaining it. You can't. For that week, so one thing that happened that week in Edmonton, so from September 29th, 2013, for the next 4 days, Alberta set a record at the University of Alberta. They did 30 transplants in 4 days. So we were the first set to get the start of the transplant. So we were the first 5 of the 30. Then the next day you have an accident on Grow Road. A motorcycle is killed. Again, another accident, motorbicycle. But he's killed this time. Then you have another inmate at the Max who's stabbed and dies in some kind of riot or something. So he's another one. Well, then you have another accident on QE2 down near, I think it was near Red Deer or whatnot. Okay, well, there's another 5 organs. All these things don't happen, and it ends up being that I'm the first person to walk out of the hospital out of a record-setting event of 30 transplants. I'm only in hospital for 4 days, and I walk out of a record-setting event. Things don't like this happen without a purpose. Like, to me, I don't know if it was a purpose that, you know, why is a transplant for AB only supposed to last 3 years and I'm on 8 and I'm as healthy as I am as day 1? You know, like I just had a call from Dr. Wen. Hey, Trevor, your kidney's doing great. Blood work's normal. Okay, I'll talk to you in 4 months. You know, why was it that when I walked out of the hospital, by the end of the week, I was on drug levels as if 2 years out from transplant, only 4 days after transplant, and I'm on drug levels 2 years away? You know, I was just, the organ had accepted it that well, which it should have been rejecting it. Now, obviously, there's medical scientists that are studying that aspect because they want to know, right? They want to know what the secret is. To me, I think it's, in my mind, I'm a happy person. I'm positive. I mean, I still get upset. Everyone gets upset. But you have to find that balance. And like I said, when I'm upset or feeling down, I'll talk to certain people, or, you know, make little dogs laugh, or go take a dog for a walk, or tell a stupid joke that people laugh at because it literally is so stupid, right? Those are little things that you have to do. And I don't know if I trained myself or it just became like part of who I was. And maybe it always was who I was, or maybe it's part of the spirit of the donor. You know, it's really hard to say. You know, all I know is, like, when a person with a heart transplant, so, you know, part of the thing is when you get a heart transplant, and I didn't even think of this until he told me this. So my heart brother, he was saying, like, when you get a transplant, it took me almost a year to learn how to sleep again. I'm like, what? I didn't understand. He goes, my heart kept me awake. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I could hear my heart. He goes, you know when you cut your finger and you feel the heartbeat in your you can feel it in your finger. It's throbbing. He goes, that was my chest. He says, I could feel it throbbing in my chest, and the beat would drive me nuts. It wasn't soothing. Like it felt like wrong and odd, and I wanted to rip it out of my chest. And it made sense that when we're born, it's the same beat. It never changes. When you go for a run, it beats faster, but it's the same beat. It's your beat. That's your unique beat that you have for the rest of your life. When he changed his heart, it's a different beat. And I heard the exact same story from the girl down in Lethbridge. She told me the same thing when I met her down there when I was down for work about, was it 4 weeks ago. We met in Lethbridge. She drove up from McGrath and said the same thing. She goes, yeah, felt like I was always gasping for air. I could breathe. I was getting oxygen. I wasn't fainting, but I felt like I was always gasping for air. They weren't my lungs. They didn't fit my chest. They fit because obviously they make sure that they fit to like the cavity. But the lungs are the hardest of the transplant because, again, they have to breathe, and they're not a muscle, right? They're using muscles around to breathe. But she was saying that she felt like she was suffocating, that she couldn't breathe. It wasn't her air, and it was funny when she said that. It wasn't my air. Like, think of that. It's not your air. So when she said that, it's kind of like all these people go through different things and what you feel. And that's why anybody that's out there, if you've had a transplant, talk around, tell your story, talk to other people, because there's people out there that every story's unique. Mine's been filled with, challenges and curveballs and you name it. And I get into accidents and, like I get hit by random people, and the people that hit me end up being 2 driver's licenses from 2 different provinces. And thankfully there's police around that actually can arrest the person on site for backing into me just in a parking lot. It happened, I'm being serious, it actually happened a couple of weeks ago. The lady gets out of her car and starts punching me, and because she can't get away because, well, one, they don't even know who she is. She's still in jail, being detained because ICBC gave her a driver's license, but it's not the person. They don't know who this person is. But so it's, I always say to people, it's like, I got the worst luck in the world, but I have the best luck in the world. So whatever bad luck I have, it's canceled out tenfold with the good luck that I have. The friends that I meet through my journeys, through talking. I've met you tonight here, and like I said, you're awesome. Like I said, just instantly, right? This guy that I met on the plane, he flew into Canada 2 weeks ago from India, arrived in Vancouver, and just got accepted today. So he boarded a flight this morning because he got the notification at like 2 in the morning that he got accepted into the University of Toronto. Young kid from India, and just like he was so excited. He's excited to start his training, and I got to sit next to him on the plane. You know, so those are, if you don't talk to people, you'll never meet them. And in our lifetime, if we don't talk to people, what's the point? Like, you're born, and if you die, yes, we all believe, you know, some religions believe in an afterlife, some believe in, you know, that you come back. But we have to live the lives that we're here. If we don't live this life that we're on this planet right now, because tomorrow could be gone.
Yeah.
On March 28th, 2011, I thought my life died. Being told at, 12 o'clock when I eventually got to the hospital, hey, 4 o'clock this afternoon, we pretty much think you're going to be dead. If you woke up today, at 10 o'clock your phone rings and says, hey, you went to the family doctor yesterday. Today's 10 o'clock, your phone rings. Hey, Trevor, get to the hospital. You get to the hospital a couple hours later because you kind of forget where you're going and you basically zone out because it's shocking news. But you eventually get to the hospital, and then the doctor tells you, we think by 4 o'clock today you're going to be dead. And that's how you thought you were going to wake up. But hey, the day before, I woke up, I went to bed. I didn't think I was going to wake up and being told by noon I was going to be dead by 4 o'clock the next day. That could happen to you. Right? There's people that get up. I mean, there's YouTube videos, Facebook where people are driving and they get hit. You know, that football player that I got the chance to meet. Do you think him and his family went to go to Christmas dinner thinking they were going to get T-boned and, lose a mom, lose a brother, and be paralyzed? They didn't get up thinking that was going to happen to them. Their life changed in an instant. Right? The motorcycle driver, just like myself, being a stupid idiot, driving drunk. And thankfully I wasn't driving, Marlon was, but still, we shouldn't have been driving. And same thing with that motorcycle driver. Do you think he got up that day and, hopefully he wasn't, I'm not going to say an alcoholic, but had maybe an issue. But I honestly don't think he got up that morning and said, hey, later this afternoon, I'm going to hop on my bike and I'm going to go drive Groat Road without a helmet. That sounds like a great idea. Wow, man, you know what? I'm calling my buddies. Guess what, guys? I'm driving Groat without a helmet. He did not wake up that way thinking. That was not how his day was going to end. Mm-hmm. So we can't live our lives like this because you may not wake up. Mm-hmm. My business partner, I got to meet his mom a couple of years ago. And she just passed away a couple weeks ago. She had a stroke, and like I said, fantastic woman. And, I bet you her son wishes that he had been up there a few days earlier and before she had the stroke. Because once a person has a stroke, they don't always remember who people are. And that was the case, right? So we got to think of those situations that, when someone passes, it could be the last time you see them. And for me, think of the 2-year-old that I was supposed to get. And I don't know his name. I just know that he was a 2-year-old. When that husband said, to his wife, and she was just running to the store and taking the kid out, when he said bye to her, and remember how I said that never say bye to anybody. He probably said bye to his wife, I'll see you later. Right? He never saw her again, and he never saw us. You just don't know. Like, he didn't wake up that morning thinking that was going to be the last day that he was going to see his wife and his 2-year-old. Right? He didn't have any other family. He had a wife and he had a son. And they left the door and that was the last. That's it. Done. They're gone. And they're not coming back. We don't come back from it. So, that's the biggest thing is, the motto is, you want to talk a motto or a saying or, a belief, is you have to do it, but you have to do it today. Like, there's no other choice. I don't sleep very much, because I want to get as much done. Like, when you have that stuff, you get those transplants, or you get, you survive cancer, you start doing stuff more. Little story about, I was a director of patient studies on an app that I developed early on in the transplant that Dr. Wen was working on with me, and because I put all my medicines into an app, and he's like, "Well, that's cool." And I said, "Well, yeah, you should really like do it for kids so that you guys can get notified. It notifies my pharmacist when I take my pills and when I run out and all this other stuff." And so we got a bunch of government grant money, and one of the people that I picked for my study was this young girl. She was on her 4th transplant, and she had an autoimmune disease, and she'd given up on life on her 4th one. So picture yourself as a 22-year-old that's had 4 transplants. You've never had a normal life. 3, you had your first one. Age of 3. We can't remember. I don't remember I did 3. Do you?
No.
Do you remember what you did on a daily basis at 3 years of age? Most people don't. Right? You might remember glimpses, or maybe you went to Disneyland and got to see Mickey and ran away from him because he was the scariest looking character you've ever seen in your world. Or Rafiki with the purple bum. Geez, God, that thing, it's one of the ugliest characters I've ever seen. That'd scare any kid. What are you doing, Disney, right? Then you get another transplant a couple years later because the first one fails. So, okay, now you're 7 years old and you're getting your 2nd transplant already, and you're 7. And most people don't get 3, let alone 2. So now this girl, well, thankfully the 2nd one lasts till she's in her teenage years, and she gets her, her 3rd transplant, and it lasts her till she's, almost a teenager, not quite 18. Most 18-year-olds are out drinking, partying for the first time, going to clubs, going to bars, living normal lives. And this poor girl's back on dialysis waiting for a 4th transplant. This is this girl's life. So I don't blame her when I saw her for the first time, and she was the grumpiest person in the world, giving up on life. Who wouldn't at that stage?
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down with her after one of the meetings, and I asked her, I said, why are you so, upset? What's so hard? She goes, well, my 4th one, I was just told by the doctor that I'm probably not going to see my 22nd birthday. Kid that's 20 years old, same age as my daughter, is told that she's not going to see her 22nd birthday. Devastating news, horrible news. You're planning for your own death, is basically what it is. So I sit down with her, I said, well, what are things that you want to leave this world? There's got to be something. And she goes, well, there's nothing. I said, there's no point. I'm going to be dead in 2 years. What's the point? There's no more point. There's got to be a point, because it's 2 years. It's 2 years of your memories, of time that you can give back to other people. Why? Why would I want to do that? There's no point. I'm going to be dead in 2 years. Well, what about your brother? What about him? I'll be dead in 2 years, and he can forget about all this mess that he's had to endure the last 20 years. Well, that's kind of selfish, don't you think? How dare you? She says to me. What do you mean? He's going to forget about me. You think your brother's going to forget about the last 20 years of seeing his poor sister have to go through this hell? He's going to remember this for the rest of the 60 years that he's alive. This hell is not going to leave him. The picture that your brother is going to have in his head is his sister with no emotion, no wanting to will of life left to live, wanting to give up on life. He has to endure that for the next 60. And you're talking about 2 years left to live? What could you do in those 2 years that could create the best 60 for your brother? I said, next time I see you, let me know. One thing that you can do with your brother, one thing you and your brother have always talked about. There's got to be stuff that you guys talked about. When I see you next week on Thursday, I want to know one thing that you could do with your brother that would change the next 60 years of his life. What could you do? So she left, and she comes back next Thursday. Before the meeting, before we had our little group session on, improvements to the app or what they thought on that week's testing, and the idiot that decides to, and of course it's all voice recorded, so the doctors can review it and the test subjects can, the analysts can do their reports up. This one guy, I have to break the story and tell it because it's so funny, but hey, so John, what'd you think of the app? I don't use these technology piece of shit. This guy's 70 years old. He goes, hell, I've had my transplant for 20 years. Sometimes I forget to take my meds all day. I'll just take them all at once in the evening. No one's gonna know. I'm like, dude, we're recording the session. Dr. Wen knows, you idiot. And like, taking meds on a spurt in time is the reason why we developed the app. Is so that when it beeps at 9:30, we know to take our meds at 9:30. You know, and we get it done on a set interval. And yeah, so it was quite funny. But before that meeting happened, and I had to do that before I forgot about it. But she pulls me aside and she goes, "So, before we get started, it'd be Disney World, but I can't go anyways. So there's no point. We can't afford it." And I said, "So Disney World, hey? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk after the meeting and whatnot." So we go through the meeting and we had our little chat for about only 5 minutes, like I said, and she's still pretty grumpy. But she told me Disney World. So roller coaster, I think it was. Yeah, it was roller coaster. Her brother wanted to ride the roller coaster with her at Disney World. So I called a few friends that I had at Enbridge when I used to work as a machinist and got in touch with a few of their apartments. And next Thursday comes around and I have an envelope in my hand. So, how's it going? Good. So, Disney World, hey? Yeah. Roller coaster? Yeah. Okay. Well, here's your tickets. You guys leave tomorrow. So her and her brother went to Disney World for a week. And she died basically on cue. She didn't make her 22nd birthday. But I guarantee her brother will remember those year and a half for the rest of his 60 years. They had the best year and a half. They were smiling. He started coming to a lot of the our group sessions for our basically development programs. And he would just sit in. He'd just sit in the chair in the back. But I mean, oh, what'd you guys do this weekend? Oh, we went mini golfing for the first time. Oh, really? Where'd you do that? Oh, we went down to Vancouver and we did Castle Fun Park. Her and I went on a road trip. You know, so that last year and a half that she was around, the memories that she created in that last year and a half wiped out the 21 years of bad memories that were before it.
That's amazing.
So it's not always about us, because eventually we all die. But again, we don't know what tomorrow brings. Live today for today.
Honestly, Ed, thank you so much for sharing all of this. That was beautiful.